Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot. I'm Audrey Seek, and we all know that Singapore's public housing system rests on 99-year leases. But for many homeowners, HDB flats have long been seen as assets that will just keep rising in value. With the Voluntary Early Redevelopment Scheme, or VERS, expected to roll out in the coming years, big questions are now bubbling up. How will compensation work? What does it mean for resale values? And how might this reshape our housing landscape over the next few decades? And what should flat owners realistically expect? To help us unpack all of this, we're joined by two guests in the studio. We're happy to welcome Keng, land use reporter at the Straits Times. Keng, thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And also joining in on the conversation is Nicholas Mak, Chief Research Officer at Mogul.sg. Nicholas, always great to have you on.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
It's great to have you. Okay, so let's start with the big picture, guys. Many Singaporeans see their HDB flats as ever-appreciating assets. So why is it so important now to confront the reality of 99-year leases? And what's at stake if expectations don't kind of shift? Nicholas, I'll give this one to you.
Not only is Singapore facing an aging population among our people, but our flats are also aging. Take, for example, right now there's about 1.15 million HDB flats built, and among that, about 1 in 5 of them are at least 50 years old. That means 1 in 5 HDB flats have remaining lease of 50 years or less. And 10 years from now, that number will rise to about 45% to 50% of the existing stock of flats are going to be 50 years old or older. So the government would need to tackle this problem, because not only is it the problem of declining lease, but also the physical building is also aging. So when a building aged to, let's say, the lease left less than 30 years or 20 years, it may not be economically viable to continue to repair the flats as it gets older. So there is also a need to not just revitalize or rebuild those flats. The other thing is also that as the population grows, there's also more pressure on providing more housing, especially in the mature estates, the more central part of Singapore, where many young home buyers are eager to acquire a home there.
Yeah. So, zooming into the mindset shift now, Keng, I want to throw this one to you. Flats have often been described as not just homes, right, but also as wealth-building tools or even a nest egg for retirement. Has this long-running narrative made it harder for people to accept the idea of lease decay?
Well, generally, I think there's an expectation among Singaporeans that flats always store a value for a long period of time. And this has held true, and this holds true for much of the flat's lifespan. Well, we haven't had flats that are close to the end of their 99-year lease. Yep. But as we get closer to that, I think that's a reality that we're going to have to confront. That's a reality that homeowners are facing for the first time, and possibly seeing that, my flat now, 40 years left, 30 years left on a lease, might not be fetching as much on the resale market as it used to.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we have to get used to.
Yeah. So getting into VERS versus SURS, right? Nicholas, can you walk us through the key differences between VERS and the earlier SURS program, and what these differences really mean for homeowners deciding whether to opt in or not?
Well, SURS or SERS is basically something where the government offers a cluster of flats, the owners of the cluster of flats, a redevelopment option. So the government will offer the owners the option either to move to a nearby set of new flats that are newly built or under construction and will be completed in the 1 to 2 years' time. And they also give some very generous compensation, like, for example, money to help them to move, and also options whether they can upsize or downsize their existing flats in the new flats. And so, to some people, they see that SURS as a kind of a lottery windfall. Yeah. I have actually gone house hunting several years ago, and I come across an owner. This was maybe about 2 decades ago, an owner whose flat actually was selected for SURS. And he was so proud. He was asking for way above valuation prices, because basically the next buyer is buying into the option to move into a new flat, and basically he's creaming off the extra profit from that. But VERS, on the other hand, is voluntary. So the details are not out yet, but basically, based on what we know, is that the government is going to offer the owners of a cluster of flats the option to vote whether they want to to go through this, something similar to SIRS, basically give up their flats in exchange for another set of new flats nearby, but the compensation may not be as generous. It will be more market-based, based on the valuation of their flats. But that is where the details is still not available yet.
Okay. So since SIRS was seen by many as something of a windfall, like Nicholas said, how big of a challenge do you think it's going to be to manage expectations of compensation when it comes to VERS?
Well, I think that this is where the government has to go through perhaps public education and so on to educate people that when you buy into a 99-year leasehold flat or a flat with 99-year lease, even if it's brand new, you basically is buying into the right to use that flat for the next 99 years. So if let's say the flat is just hypothetically 60 years old, so you're left with about 39, let's say 40 years left on the lease, the government can, through perhaps VERS, offer the owner the option to move into another flat, brand new, newly built, but also with just 40 years left of lease.
Okay.
So in the way, the owner is not shortchanged. In fact, he's getting a new flat. It's just that he has to move, and perhaps the government can also offer him the option to either extend the lease or upsize or downsize his flat.
Okay, so King Jean, bring you in now, on the subject of compensation and fairness. Looking ahead to how compensation might be structured under VERS, how do you think it can strike a balance, looking after the current homeowners while also being fair to future generations?
Well, I think built into this 99-year policy of land renewal itself caters to future generations. It allows current owners to live, I guess, beyond most average lifespans. 99 years is a long time, considering if they take the 99 years from the start, let's say in their 20s.
Yeah.
That in itself is fair to future generations, in my view. I think the other two groups that potentially the policy needs to be fair to, people who are not offered VERS, because I think it's going to cause a lot of friction if we're looking over at my neighbours and they're offered VERS and their terms are very attractive. Whereas I'm in my own flat with 99 years and the same policy, the same benefits are not extended to me. So that's one group. I think we also have to be conscious that because of the voluntary nature of VERS, within projects, there'll be a vote that goes on, and there'll be some who do not wish to move, but may have to move inevitably because perhaps the voting threshold is met. These are people that we're going to want to have to look out for as well, because they, in a sense, are going to have to move against their will.
Yeah. I think since VERS requires a majority vote from residents to proceed, to your point, what factors do you think are likely to influence how homeowners decide whether or not to opt into VERS? Any factors that come to mind that you think would be top of mind for these homeowners?
I think people want to know exactly what they're moving into. In an ideal situation, they want to move to somewhere that's close to areas, places they're really familiar with. Yeah. If I were to move, that would be top of mind for me.
Right.
Yeah. But as far as leases go, I think the realistic expectation would be to live out whatever you have on your current 99-year lease. Yeah, and nothing more than that.
Okay. So, Nicholas, let's talk about the impact on redevelopment and the market. How might VERS change the way aging towns are being redeveloped compared to the past upgrading and renewal programs that we've seen?
Well, some of the existing upgrading program basically is repairing some of the essential services like the leaf or putting a new coat of paint, or some of them may be a bit cosmetic. But for VERS, basically we're talking about moving all the residents out of those cluster of flats, demolishing them and rebuilding it. And that is quite essential because right now what we discovered through our research is that some of the towns that have the highest number of aging flats, those that were built in the 1960s and before, one of them is Toa Payoh right here, and the others is like Bukit Merah and Queenstown. Now, the thing is that these are also very popular housing estates with homeowners of all ages. And it's difficult for the government to build new HDB blocks of flats, like, for example, in Toa Payoh, because there's just not enough vacant land. So one way is actually through redevelopment, through VERS, where they can rejuvenate certain parts of the town by demolishing the older flats and building more homes on those plots of land.
Right. Okay. So let's close the loop here. Before I let the two of you go, this is for the both of you. What should Singaporeans realistically expect from VERS? Is it a partial fix to lease decay or more of a long-term planning tool to keep rejuvenating the public housing landscape? Nicholas, I'll start with you.
Okay, I think that verse is necessary because about 20 years or 30 years from now, we're going to cross that line where more than half of our flats are going to cross that 50-year mark. And furthermore, we can't be demolishing stadiums or race courses all over Singapore to try to find more land to build new homes, because these homes are going to be further and further away from the town centre where a lot of people would like to live. So it is necessary. And I think the other realistic thing that Singaporeans will need to be realised is that there are HDB flats, once it crosses a certain age, it can't be appreciating the price all the time, because with VERS, the government is trying to bring some realism to the resale housing market, is that you have to look at the remaining lease of your flat, right? And let's say it's left only 40 years or less, you can't be expecting the government to bail out, because in a way, SERS is a kind of bailout, it's a kind of parachute.
Yeah.
VERS, VERS, may be a smaller parachute.
Okay. And what about you, Keng Jean? Any thoughts on what Singaporeans should expect from VERS? Can they expect this to be a silver bullet for lease decay?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a silver bullet for lease, okay? I think I echo what Nicholas said earlier. When Singaporeans buy a flat, when they're buying a lease, they're buying a right to live in a flat for 99 years. And I think as far as VERS is concerned, whether or not you're offered VERS, whether you choose to live in your current flat, I think the realistic expectation is that you're going to get to live in a home until the end of that 99 years.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, VERS may not be a silver bullet for lease decay, but it does mark a shift in how Singapore approaches housing as both a home and an asset. Thank you so much to you two gentlemen for joining us on the show this morning. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We were joined by Keng Jean, land use reporter at the Straits Times, and Nicholas Mak, Chief Research Officer at Mogul.sg. Keep it here, Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.